On Wednesday, I remember he had called me, and it was like on a Friday or Saturday night that we had been at the bar. But on Wednesday, he called me, and I was on cloud nine. My dreams of a prince maybe finally coming true. It was destiny, and we would live happily ever after. He was intelligent. He was an electrician. He had a good job. At a, he was just, I don't know. He wasn't like really suave, a debonair kind of guy. He wasn't really good with words. He just, and neither am I, by the way, but he was, it wasn't like he was like a dreamboat or anything, but I found it interesting, I guess you could say. And he was intelligent, and I saw stars. I remember on the phone, I heard kids in the background. And then I made me worried he was a player and maybe he was married and just trying to have a fling with a young girl. Then he said he had custody of his kids, and I thought that was odd. I didn't ask too many questions, but I never really, at that time, being 17, I never even heard of a guy having his children and not the mother. And then he said, well, he didn't. I didn't ask too many questions, and he was trying to play it cool. He said it was a long story, and he'd tell me later. And I thought, well, maybe his wife left and left the kids and ran off with another man or something. And we made a date for Friday night, and we'd go to dinner. And I was just like, a date, a real date. Nobody ever takes me to dinner except my mother. And I just definitely wasn't used to this. And then Friday night came and I was on pins and needles. What should I wear? He thought I was 21. What do I do if I get carded? Should I tell him? Would we go back to his place? He showed up on Friday in a polyester suit. And I remember his car was an Oldsmobile Cutlass. And he opened the door for me. I thought that was funny. And all the little things you lock into your memory. I remember thinking if things worked out for us, I could teach him how to dress and buy him some stylish clothes. The entire outfit that he was wearing was, it was not exactly the Saturday Night Live look. And it just wasn't impressive in any way. We went to eat. I don't remember where. I just know we went to the same lounge where we met after dinner, and I was really scared that I'd get carded, but I wasn't. I was so glad, and I remember I ordered a screwdriver, and we talked, and then we left to go back to his place, and his house was a three-bedroom little, you know, standard looking home um, in a quiet subdivision. And I took everything in. I remember all I could think about was, yeah, it looks okay. It's definitely a man's place. There wasn't any pictures on the wall. There wasn't anything that said a woman lived there. There was, however, kids' toys, but there wasn't anything spectacular about the place. The carport, and these things are so crazy that I remember, but the carport led into the laundry room, and off of that was the kitchen, and there were mirrors surrounding the sink and stove. It was the worst backdrop of a kitchen ever to be surrounded with mirrors. And then there was the living room. It had a TV, a sofa, a chair, a kid's toy box. The furniture was thick, like, you know, something you'd see on Married with Children. And I mean, it was the style of furniture that was popular at that moment, like in Married with Children. But um, it just looked like a single man lived there with kids running around. Very ordinary, very simple, no knickknacks. That's about all I remember. There was a bathroom and 3 bedrooms. I remember the hallway led down to the boys' room, the girls' room, a bathroom. Every room was very bland. Um, the master bedroom was really ugly. It was a little knotted pine bed. Um, I was definitely for sure no woman lived there. And I remember the bed, and his choice of bedding was something that looked like it came from his childhood growing up. It just didn't look like it was at all comfortable or sexy in any way. He said his kids were gone for the weekend, so I assumed they were with the mother, um, their mother. I can't remember if I left that night or and returned or I just stayed. Eventually, I did stay the night, and we, I guess, started our romantic relationship. And he was an electrical engineer, like I said, and he was really busy during the week because he worked at a plant. But he called me frequently, and I remember I was always excited to get his phone calls. I don't remember if he was any good in bed, which is kind of sad considering he ended up being my first husband. I just remember thinking it was just normal sex and kind of bland. Um, he had a motorcycle, not like a Harley, or he wasn't like a biker like that. He was one of those. I mean, now I guess I would call them motorcyclists, um, who, you know, put their helmets on all the time and who have really decked out motorcycles and do it like driving to work or do it like driving to a park or something like that. There's no ruggedness of it at all. And I thought his motorcycle was pretty. I did think that. Um, and I remember back then when I would ride with him, it was fun. It was fun driving down the road and going to parades. And he was in this little motorcycle club that they did parades and um, events. I mean, it wasn't like he would ever end up in Sturgis at the motorcycle rally or ever be at a motorcycle bar that was full of rough guys. He was just not that type. But anyway, looking back, I don't think I was ever really in love with him more than anything, just infatuated. I thought he was sensitive and he was sensible and worldly and some of what I had dreamed of and that I needed in my life. I needed someone to hold me down in one spot and changed me into a wife and a mother. I mean, I've had babysit kids for a long time, and I felt like I would be a good mom if I had a child. So getting two children, a little boy and a little girl, as my stepkids, I just kind of thought, I can do that. That's no problem. Plus, neither one of them are babies. They're, you know, big enough to sleep in their beds and they don't pee in their pants. You know, they're big enough to be just little kids. So I'm a kid. That'll work. That's the way I thought about it. I remember when he told me about his ex wife, I was floored. She was in prison for embezzling money from the city. And I was floored by that. I just, what? And that's why she doesn't have her kids. She'd left him with a 2-year old and a 5-year old, walking out cold turkey on all of them. That's what I had kind of envisioned, maybe, but he said it was really hard. He was trying to do his best. He was taking care of the family. Then he realized, you know, there was daycare, feeding, balanced meals. I remember he made me feel sorry for him right off the bat. I thought of how much he needed a woman. He needed someone like me to keep house and take care of the kids. He said he had some help from his ex's mother. Every weekend she'd take the kids off his hands and give him a break. After all, she hadn't been too happy at what her daughter had done, so she was glad to help him. All I could think about was being with him, being a mother to his kids. I knew I'd be a good wife. After all, that's what I had dreamed of for so long. He asked me if I'd like to come over and meet the kids one night, on a weeknight. He said he had a motorcycle meeting to go to and that he really needed a babysitter. There's a red flag right there. I should have seen that. Now that I'm thinking about it again, there's my first red flag. Because looking back at it now, I tell everybody that I'm convinced he didn't love me. I'm convinced he loved that I was young and good looking, but I'm convinced that he was looking for a babysitter and someone that could keep house and someone that didn't know anything and would just do whatever he said. But at the time, I remember I thought of it as an opportunity to have the picket fence, the happiness, the life that I wanted, that I'd been searching for. And I also thought it was a good opportunity for me to put all the darkness away and change my life for the better. Anyway, plus he felt like that was a good way for me to get to know the kids without him around. I remember I told him I'd be happy to watch them. I can't remember when it was, but I immediately fell in love with his kids. Maddie was frail, a petite wisp of a girl. However, she had the biggest and brightest eyes, and she just grabbed at my heart. Maddie was beautiful blonde hair, but I remember I could tell it hadn't been washed in a while. She was so adorable. I remember, though, she kept her distance from me. James, on the other hand, was starving for attention. He was a very cute boy with soft brown hair and eyes that made me melt. James wore a big smile and immediately took to showing me around. I soon learned he was also very bright, something you'd expect in a little prodigy kid. He talked my head off all night. Finally, Maddie crawled up next to me, hugging one of her dolls. Both children, although not abused physically, seemed to be somewhat neglected. They wore really beaten up clothes, not sized to fit, and stained. I thought it was probably because Matt didn't know what to buy or how to do laundry. The refrigerator was practically empty. After looking through the kitchen, all I found was peanut butter, ketchup, bologna, mustard, pickles, a loaf of bread, and Kool-Aid. That's pretty much it. I again attributed to that he was a man and just didn't know how to run a household. No matter what the house looked like, the kids' clothes or lack of food, all I could think about was those kids. They were so adorable. Maddie needed a mommy. The truth was, they both needed a mommy. Someone to see that they had nice things, that they had their baths and good food to eat. I had a person in mind. Yep, it was me. I could get used to this, and in return, they could give me what I've always been searching for, which was a purpose for living. I called it destiny. This was my chance to finally turn my life around. I remember thinking my dreams had all come true. I remember I said yes as fast as I could when he asked me to marry him. My wishes had all been answered, and faster than I really expected. I should have known something wasn't right for him to ask me so quickly to marry him. I not only needed him, but I saw a new mother in me, or but he saw a new mother in me. He knew that by marrying me, I could help with the kids. I don't know if either of us really loved each other or if it was just the needs that we both seemed to find in each other that drove us down the aisle. Maybe it was at least in my case, a fantasy come true. My mother was surprised. She thought that if I was really in love, it might be good for me. So I don't remember her protesting too much about the idea. A man to hold me down, something she'd not been able to. What a unique concept. Looking back, I think my mother probably welcomed it. She probably saw me as an issue that would constantly, I don't know, constantly be a problem. I mean, after all, I'd always been a problem, and then I'd had my wreck, and I'd had more than just one wreck. And I think my mother probably felt like it would take me out of her hands and make me somebody else's problem. I remember we started planning the wedding. Not too big, a church, flowers, cake, reception. And he had this really large family. It would be beautiful. I was wishing, though, that I could just close my eyes and suddenly have it all over with. I didn't really want my dad there at all. He'd been out of my life for a while, and I just wanted to keep it that way. I remember talking to him on the phone and us getting into this huge fight. I told him to stay the hell away from me. that I had lost my love for him a long time ago. I remember when we got off the phone, I went to the bathroom and threw up, crying uncontrollably. I wanted so much for us to have a good relationship and for him to say he was sorry for all the things that he had done. No lectures, nothing, just sorry, and that he loved me and always would. But that didn't happen. Anyway, my mom helped me with all the wedding arrangements. I was going to be married. I don't remember too much about meeting Matt's family, except for the first time that his mom and I met. I'd spent the night at his house. Oh, yeah, this is a funny story. Anyway, I'd stayed at his house and he'd left for work, and I was cleaning in his bathrobe, and I heard someone come in. And I thought for a moment it might be Matt. Maybe he'd come back, maybe. But when I came out of the bedroom, I was shocked to see his mother. And I think she was equally shocked to see me. She asked where he was, and I said he was at work. I remember she just turned around and quickly left. She didn't say anything else to me, and I didn't know her or know what to say. I thought, what she must be thinking about me. What a really great impression that Shirley made. She probably thinks I'm just some sort of slut, a one night stand, and just hadn't left yet. I didn't even get a chance to tell her that I was going to be her new daughter in law. No, that was Matt's job. That definitely wasn't mine. Anyway, we finally tied the knot on February 17th, 1979. And yes, I did come clean about my age before Matt married me. Everyone was there, the motorcycle club, his family, everyone. Beautiful gifts, beautiful wedding. However, things began to go downhill really fast. For one, my honeymoon was, for instance, a nightmare. It definitely wasn't the typical honeymoon, and definitely not what I expected or ever dreamed of. After all, it was a real surprise when Matt told me we were going to a motorcycle convention with his brother and his sister-in-law. I remember my mouth just fell open and tears came to my eyes. I'm pretty sure Matt calmly said, "Don't worry, it'll be great." It was winter and extremely cold, freezing weather. We found a motel, nothing fancy, just like a little motel. It could have been a Motel 8 for all I know, or Motel 6, I guess that's the name of it. Anyway, it was just a little motor inn off the highway. The rooms were cold and very dreary. We all ate at the restaurant next door, and then we went to our rooms, going right to sleep. Yep, I said it. We went right to sleep. No hanky panky of any kind. Just right to sleep. Wasn't a wedding night supposed to be something different than this? Here I was, a young woman, newly married, and had planned on this night for quite a while. I had brought a very skimpy little nightgown and all the trimmings, only to get, "I'm tired, it's going to be a long day tomorrow, let's get some sleep." I was broken-hearted, but I never said anything to anyone. Then, to top it all off, the next morning at the crack of dawn, and I'll never forget this. First of all, I need to say I was brought up as Baptist. We didn't always go to church, but I was always back and forth to Baptist churches. And Matt was a Catholic. His family was all Catholic. And all that time that I had been with Matt, which wasn't extremely long, you're talking just months basically, because I'm not for sure when we had met, but uh, I would guess we were together like about 5 months before we married. And out of all that time, I had never seen him be a practicing Catholic. And I knew they were Catholic, but nothing had been brought up about it until it kind of got close to the wedding date. So, anyway, excuse me, the next morning at the crack of dawn, no, it was actually before dawn because it was in the winter. It was like 5 a.m. and my new sister-in-law woke me up and she said it was time to go to Mass. Well, I knew what Mass was. They were all Catholic, and since I was raised Baptist, it was something that knew that I was going to have to get used to, I guess. So now what? We're all going to Mass. Trust me, I wasn't thrilled, not in the least little bit. Was she kidding? No, unfortunately, she wasn't. I hadn't even gone to church on a regular basis for years. Neither did Matt, because he had been divorced, and that's looked down upon in the Catholic religion. Not to mention, it was the day after our wedding, and we hadn't even had a chance to consummate our marriage. Yet here we were going to church as one big happy family. It wasn't, however, my husband's idea. It was my new in-laws, and Matt didn't want to say anything. So there you go. During the first part of my marriage, I learned a lot. After 6 weeks, my new husband set me down. I'll never forget this. And he informed me that we couldn't have sex all the time. Once or twice a week was good enough, he said. And once every other week might even be better. Matt said he just didn't want to, and that he wasn't that interested in sex. I remember I was crushed. I'd always thought that when you got married, you could do whatever you wanted. You could have it every night if you wanted. Not to mention the fact that I'd never been with anybody that ever turned me down before. Not anybody. And I thought men were pretty much up for sex just about any time. So it was news to me, and it really hurt me. I remember I cried and I felt like I'd done something wrong. Matt said I was a little oversexed and I should calm down. He even called me a nymphomaniac, and I didn't even know what that word meant. I wondered if this was what they meant by the honeymoon is over. Gosh, I do remember that. After that, I began to throw myself into cleaning, decorating, cooking, taking care of the kids, and Matt began to treat me like a babysitter and a maid. He hardly ever talked. We didn't go out anymore. Over a year had passed, and I knew that our marriage was going to be hard to hold on to. He was working the swing shift, and I had all kinds of energy building inside of me. My thoughts started turning towards having a baby, a little one of my own. After all, that might change things. A baby would give me something to be happy about. It would hopefully bring us closer. Someone I could bond with, someone I could give all my love to. Furthermore, a baby to love me and keep me occupied. A baby would be someone I could give all my attention to, and then maybe things would be better with my marriage, even though I knew it wouldn't. It's funny looking back, I guess, like I said in the first part, um, you see the paths that are in front of you, but you want things to work out so bad, and you disregard the fact that before you were married, he wanted you to babysit for his kids to get to know them, and even use that word when you should have realized that's what you were going to end up being. Because if somebody was wanting their fiance to meet their kids, you could just say, would you like to come over and watch them and get to know them with me not around? And then when I come home, we'll, play a game or we'll do something fun. I don't know. It could have been said differently. And then now, after just 6 weeks of marriage, he's saying he's not that interested in sex with someone he's just married. And then after a year, it's gotten to where there's really no conversation between the two of you. I remember every bit of it. We were going to raise Siberian Huskies, for example. And he had a female Siberian Husky, and he'd gotten a male Siberian Husky, and the male took to me. And I love animals, so I took to the male more so than the female. She was a little aggressive, but the male loved me, like literally loved me. And he hated that. He was mean to the dog because the dog loved me and growled at him. And, there is that saying that dogs and other animals can see the real person behind, whoever you really are behind just your outward appearance. So maybe Charlie, that was the dog's name. He was beautiful. He was a big Siberian Husky he was a piebald, and he had one blue eye and one green eye, and he was all white-headed, and then the normal markings everywhere else, but he was beautiful and loving, very loving, loving dog. And maybe when he growled at Matt, maybe he saw something that I didn't. But yeah, I remember he just was in his own little world. He worked. He had a little like shed out back that he did some extra work on his off time, like a hobby work kind of thing, where he fixed TVs and radios. And he worked on his motorcycle, but we didn't go riding like we used to. And I was alone all the time with the kids, unless they were in school, but the little one wasn't in school. But I remember it was just, I don't know, like a sore spot with me. I thought, maybe if I get pregnant, he's got 2 kids, so maybe he'll accept a baby and that'll bring us closer. And maybe if he doesn't, at least I'll have something to occupy my time. And I don't know. I don't know what I thought. I just kept dreaming and not looking at the red flags and hoping that things would get better. I do remember that. Maybe a baby would change things. Hmm. That's probably the worst idea in the whole world. And now that I'm older, I know all of that. But back then, no. I mean, you got to realize I was barely 18 when I got married. I turned 18 on Christmas Day, and we got married in February. And I just was still clueless about life and still looking for happiness and trying to make it come. You know, maybe I didn't love him. Maybe he didn't love me, but maybe if we tried hard enough, maybe if I tried hard enough, he'd love me and it would be better. At least all those things are things that went through my head.